another episode of Biters. This is Diane from Willow, Alaska.
And this is Kirk from the other side of Skype.
And the other side of the country.
Yeah, that's for damn sure.
So Kirk is going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in terms of his life and Jeff's life.
I don't want to keep boring people, but just wanted to remind people at the top here that this is probably going to be my last Biters for a while. Diane has been gracious enough to ask me to come back on for the mid-season finale. So you'll get to listen to my ramblings then. But otherwise, I'm going to move on and focus on maybe my art tributes and,
awesome.
and other things that are going on. So, and Diane's going to pick up the reins here and charge forward. And I know you guys aren't going to be disappointed. I think she's going to do a fantastic job.
Thank you very much. And I have another person taking the seat next to me. Her name is Megan. She's currently at Walker Stalker Con, which is part of the reason we're not hearing from her right now. Hey, Megan, sorry I don't have the rest of your name, but I promise I'll announce it to everybody on next week's well, you'll announce it to everybody on next week's show. So...
And then you said she's in a documentary
She is. So apparently there is a documentary out there. It's doing some premieres and some festivals, it sounds like, called Walkers Among Us. And the people that I have talked to, including Rob from Southgate Media, say that it is just superb. Of course, being stranded in rural Alaska by choice, I haven't exactly seen it yet. So, but it sounds like there's the potential to either stream it or buy it from their website, the walkersamongus.com. So I'm going to definitely look for that this weekend because Megan.
And is it a documentary about? Do you know if it's a documentary about like the Walker Stalker cons? Or is it just about fans of zombie stuff or Walking Dead?
I think it's a little bit of both, quite honestly. So I'd heard about it a while ago, and it sounded like it was starting out basically to document the rise of the Walker Stalker cons. But they're also really focused on the fans. And it just so happens that Megan, who is taking the other seat, is a super fan who is pretty prominently featured in this documentary. So, and wow. She sounds like she's just a really fascinating person.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think that sounds great. I think she'll be wonderful. I have to laugh, Diane. It's so funny because Jeff and I, we used to do Skype, but we always did the video Skype.
Oh.
So we always, we see each other while we talk to each other. And so every once in a while when you're talking and I'm talking, I look up and for a second, I think I'm looking at the screen and I'm seeing the person I'm talking with, but you have this huge icon of this beautiful horse head.
Oh, how funny.
And I keep thinking, I'm like, is this like Mr. Ed? I'm like talking to a horse. It's just funny. It just cracks me up.
So I actually wasn't sure.
Is that your horse?
That's my horse, Jupiter.
Oh my gosh.
And I used to have a picture of his butt and Hercules' butt next to each other. So be grateful you're not looking at the other end of the horse.
Hercules is another horse, or is Hercules as in like the character Hercules?
No, so we actually have Hercules, Jupiter, and Moon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Moon is a relatively new addition to our lives, and Hercules was a rescue. He was actually starved and on death's door when we took him in, and he's doing great.
Wow.
So, and Jupiter's just spoiled.
Wow. Well, Jupiter is beautiful.
Thank you.
So, and what's the dog count up to now?
Oh goodness. Okay. So
not to bring out all your, animal habits, but I'm curious.
I just don't want people to be traumatized and think I'm a hoarder.
So, if anything, you're a humanist or animalist.
So we had sled dogs before our fire, and unfortunately we lost several of our dogs in our fire. We had a new mom in the house and some puppies and a couple of injured and elderly dogs. That was super hard.
That was terrible.
Oh, it was horrible. So
I'm so sorry about that.
Thank you.
Sled dogs though, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, so cool.
Not competitive, just recreational. We just play. Right. And we're probably going to be out for most of this season because we have to replace equipment. But we've got, I want to say 13 or 14 dogs right now, and 4 of them are house dogs.
Wow. That's
So
cool. I'm a big dog lover.
me too.
No cats, I hope.
One cat, she
Okay.
rules the roost in the garage. So
Ah, that's that's where cats belong. I'm not a cat fan. Not a cat fan at all.
Well, I think she'd be fine with the exception of one of our dogs. We have a dog named Aster who would prefer to eat her. So
It's my kind of dog. We had a wonderful letter, a very nice letter that was sent to both, addressed to both myself and Jeff, and I just wanted to read it. It was from Raymond O'Sullivan. It said, "Hi, Kirk and Jeff, longtime listener, first time emailer from Dublin, Ireland. Awesome.
yeah.
Just catching up on the season 6 episodes and read that you're stepping down from the show. Just wanted to say, well done on a great job on the podcast. Always enjoyed listening in on the car journey home from work and will continue to do so. All the best with whatever you guys get up to in the future. Happy Halloween, Ray." That was very sweet. We had a number of people that posted and sent emails that had never, communicated with us. But when they heard we were leaving, they wanted to make sure that they said something. And so thanks a lot, Raymond. And thanks to everybody else that sent us best wishes. And we appreciate that. And I know you're going to love what Diane has in store for you, and Biters will continue. So don't give up. Keep listening.
I hope I can carry the torch.
Oh, absolutely. You're a natural. You're a natural.
Well, I just think that the fan interaction is really great. I really love it, and I'm looking forward to us being able to share some of the feedback that we got tonight.
Yeah.
So, and I hope that people continue to listen, and I hope we continue to gain listeners.
Did you check out Supergirl?
No, but I heard it was really good. You were saying it had huge
awesome.
Numbers.
Yeah, it had huge numbers. It supposedly had the largest opening numbers for a superhero, or the biggest premiere of a superhero show so far on TV, and it was great. It was just, I loved it. I thought it was really well done. It was well paced. The acting was great. It was a little bit more. It wasn't dark and broody. It's funny because like DC movies, the DC comic book based movies are always like dark and heavy.
Dark Knight and
oh my gosh, but their TV is really good. The Flash is one of my favorite shows, and now I think this will be as well. So
I'm going to have to look at
check it out. Yeah.
I was saying to you, and I think I may have said it last week, so I may be repeating myself already, but I just think it's so cool that we live in a time when our comic book heroes are coming to life.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
I was a huge X-Men fan when I was a teenager, so seeing them on the big screen and seeing them done pretty well is pretty exciting.
Yeah, supposedly their Fox is working on bringing some of the X-Men to television now.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting. But I agree. I think we're in a particularly golden age of television. I think that the whole cable and Netflix, kind of options, HBO, all that stuff has just transformed the expectations of what you can get on TV now. Like special effects and some of the caliber of writing. Now you're seeing, movie stars come down and start doing TV stuff. It's just phenomenal. There's too much. There's not enough time.
I agree. I agree. I'm just thinking about the things that I've really fallen in love with and have not had a chance to keep up with. Orange is the New Black, Transparent.
Yeah.
Frankie and Gracie with Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda.
Yeah.
You're right.
House
there's
of
just
Cards.
So much good TV.
House of Cards. I started watching that and just ran out of time. It's a great show.
I totally need to binge on that because, the other podcast that I do is a political podcast. So it would be right up my alley.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good show. So, but the best show there is
The Walking Dead, of course.
Dead. And they did not disappoint this week, huh?
Oh my God.
What were the numbers?
Unfortunately, we're a little early in terms of live +3, but in terms of live numbers, let's see. When you looked, you got 13.4 million. I got 13.1 million. At 13.1 million, that was actually an 8% rise from last week's viewing as on the same day viewing.
Cool.
And so the other thing that was really cool, and I mentioned this to you before we started, Talking Dead, the show that plays after,
Yeah.
had a huge surge in numbers. They actually had up to a 49% increase over their typical viewership.
Right. Well, I mean, as we kind of mentioned off the mic, that I'm sure a lot of that was people tuning in to see if Stephen Young was on, and whether or not he was. They were going to confirm
Right.
what we had just seen. You know what I mean?
Because
So,
everybody was freaking out, and they still
right.
are.
Oh, absolutely. It's I'll talk about it. It's actually part of my ugly. So
it's mine too. I mean, I think we'll probably spend a fair portion on that.
yeah.
So how did you rate it this week?
Let's see. I would give it probably maybe 4.2 blue dumpsters.
So I've got to tell you, I've been really struggling. And I think part of it is just there's this building pervasive sense of sadness around this episode.
Yeah.
So I'm like somewhere between 4 and 5 rotting corpses in pet store cages.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I had a few little picky things. I didn't feel that it flowed as nicely as the first 2 episodes. But I thought that the direction wasn't quite as good as the first 2 episodes, and there wasn't as much for me. I'll talk about it in my bads, but
Okay.
Of the creative stuff that they were doing in the first 2 episodes. So for me, that kind of knocked it down a little bit, but it did get better as it progressed, and of course, with the way it finished up, it was.
Right.
It was tremendous. But so what did, let's see, it was written by Angela Kang.
Correct. Who, let's see, it looks like she's got a total of 12 Walking Dead episodes, including this one, to her credit. Last season, Try, Coda, Four Walls and a Roof. And I actually chatted with one of our viewers or one of our listeners rather, on Facebook earlier today about, Angela Kang is becoming someone I don't like very much because she killed Beth.
Yeah.
And I know that
well,
I'm like
we
the
should
Beth
have
half,
known when we saw her she was the writer, huh?
Right. And then director was Michael
Slovis, yeah. I didn't see which other one. Has he directed others?
So it looks like he's got Breaking Bad, CSI, 30 Rock, some shows like that to his credit. And then he's got tons of director of photography credits. But I didn't see
his first Walking Dead, huh?
So it looks like this was his first Walking Dead as main director, and it looks like he's done some photography directing for them previously.
Okay, cool. What do you think the title, the thank you, was?
I'm so glad you asked, because I kind of struggled. I mean, there were a bunch of different things that I thought it meant. I mean, first of all, I think the really obvious interpretation is that Nicholas was thanking Glenn for restoring his humanity and for restoring his dignity. That Glenn spared him and tried to tell him that he was a good person in spite of everything that had happened.
Right.
I also kind of wonder if it was a thank you from Nicholas to the walkers, to the scenario, for giving him a way out of the apocalypse.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Through the whole episode, he was really distressed, miserable, reluctant, resistant, and I just kind of felt like, oh, thank God it was a way out. I mean, I felt like it was a huge, not so much a letdown for that character, but just thank God I can escape.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I agree with you that I think, obviously the main aspect of it is the thanking Glenn for, giving him a second chance, basically, when he didn't feel he obviously deserved it. But there were a number of other storylines that weaved through this episode that also, I think, the title could apply to. For instance, I think Heath owed thanks to Michonne for sticking with him and for helping to educate him.
Yes. And that moment, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, was actually one of my favorite moments in the show.
And then I think, Rick owes thanks to Glenn for saving him in the very beginning of the series. And they certainly made, a lot of reference to that, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
And then Abraham and I think and Sasha are thankful that Daryl turned around and decided to stick with the plan and stick with his people and go back, as opposed to going back to Alexandria in a panic. You know what I mean?
We'll talk about that a little in my bads. That was one of my bads, actually.
And then I think that there was a message of thankfulness from Glenn to Maggie, which we didn't see directly, but we were seeing through the story of Bob. I think was it or Dave?
The man who was trying to get home to Betsy.
The guy who got bit, who was trying to get home to his wife.
Yeah, I believe his name was David.
Yeah. David. Okay. And, because his story really, was very metaphorically the story of Glenn and Maggie.
And Glenn said it. He said, my wife's back in Alexandria too.
Right.
So the other thing that I thought is that I kind of felt like it was a thank you from all of us to Glenn for being who he was. Glenn was consistently a good character, an honorable person, always the person who was willing to stick his neck out for somebody else.
Right.
So I kind of felt like it was a thank you to Glenn and to Stephen Yeun for who he was.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably very true. What were your goods?
Oh, let me flip back to those pages. So I definitely loved the zombie in the woods who had the fully exposed rib cage. I know we have talked about how the zombies are aging and becoming more and more kind of decrepit, and that was a really good visual effect. I thought you had a great point from our last podcast, and it's about Abraham, and Abraham echoed it. He said, the magic number's 20, that's the mission, when Daryl was talking about only taking the walkers 5 miles out.
Right.
And remember, you said that Abraham is somebody who has to function in the presence of a mission.
Yeah, he always does better when he has a mission. Yep.
Yeah. So I thought that was a good. I thought actually Sturgis was a good, the Alexandrian who
the floppy hat guy.
Yeah. The guy who ran off. I was like,
that would be me in the zombie apocalypse. I just freaking snap, lose it, and run off. Ah!
So the funny thing is so he was so typical of people from that community, and actually even the gal who sprained her ankle said he left us behind, and I thought, well, that pretty much mirrors what Nicholas and his crew had done.
Right, exactly. That's what they do. They do all the time, or did all the time. When things got rough, they just left them behind, man.
I actually also thought that Daryl just looked like a badass right out of Mad Max. I mean, he just looks a little crazier and a little grubbier and a little more like a Mad Max character every time we see him.
Right. Well, he's been on that bike a lot.
I know. And pretty soon he's going to be solo on that bike, man. I agree with you. I think he's probably going to be the only person who's still insisting on going out into the bigger world. Let's see what else. Shoulder bite guy, David. So I'm pretty sure his wife, Betsy, is a pull from the comic.
Oh,
so I just wanted to point that out as a good. I actually am going back.
Well, wasn't Holly last week a pull from the comic?
But Holly had like a big role in the comic and was pretty much just, hey, okay, yeah, she's dead. Bye, Holly. In the show.
Didn't Holly, if I remember right, spoilers here for people who haven't read the comics. So if you don't want any comic spoilers, then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Holly was the woman that Abraham has the affair with, right?
That's right. He leaves her. And then he leaves Rosita for her.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and she has a pretty big role, if I remember right, down the road.
She does, and I'm surprised that they got rid of her so soon. So
they'll just give that role to somebody else. But
exactly, I'm wondering who they're going to hand that off to.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it'll just be Rosita. Yeah. Know what I mean?
I would like something good to happen for Rosita. I really like that character, and I'd like to see them build with her. So
Dan, this is The Walking Dead.
That's right.
Good does not happen. No. And if it does, then you know that bad is imminently around the corner.
So I don't wish anything good for Rosita because that means she'll die in the next episode.
You're not up to speed on the comic, right?
I'm getting there. I actually downloaded a couple more onto my book.
Spoil.
So
what else?
Nicholas. So, he's the guy we love to hate. Somebody said that, but that actor did such a great job. He looked totally terrified and traumatized throughout the entire episode. And I
Yeah.
really felt like he portrayed someone who was experiencing post-traumatic stress in a really phenomenal way. He was really good. So, I'm not sorry to see the character go, but the actor did a fantastic job.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And there was definitely a concerted effort to show us that he was unraveling.
Yes.
There was some, visual treatments to the shots. There was some, they'd focus in on him and his eyes would be all crazy like, and it'd get
Mhm.
fuzzy around the sides of they were definitely trying to say that this guy was just hanging on by a thread.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
And I thought that the music with Heath and Michonne was really good. You had
Mm,
mentioned the music last week, and it didn't have a huge presence, but the music during the interaction between the two of them has a very nice build.
mm.
Um, I also felt like the jar of baby food that Rick found at the end was good,
Right.
was a good, because
Oh, yeah.
that totally puts paid to any good intentions he has remaining. You know,
What do you mean?
I just feel like he saw that and immediately realized that, he gave everybody the speech about, if we go back early, we're doing it for us, we're not doing it for them. And then he saw that jar of baby food and realized that that was Judith's,
Right.
and realized
Right.
that Judith was in danger or potentially worse. And I think that took away any heroism that he had left, in terms of, this is for them, not for us.
Right.
So
Well, he kind of goes full Shane,
he
in that,
does.
in that speech, and on over the walkie-talkie when he's in the RV, and he's like you just said, this is, going back and helping would be selfish,
Yep.
and he's just kind of detaching himself from his, humanity and morality, and then he finds the baby food, and all of a sudden it becomes personal.
It just pulled him right back.
And it pulls, yeah, and all of a sudden he realizes maybe it is important that we, do the moral thing and go back and defend and or whatever, But it's what makes this show so great,
Yeah.
because it's all about moral questions and how morality is important, but it can be an incredible liability. You know what I mean?
And I've said it so many times to people who've never watched this show. This show is so not about zombies. I mean, I love the zombies, don't get me wrong, but it is so much about the ethical dilemma and questions like that.
Right.
That's
Well, I mean,
really what we're talking about.
you have in one breath you have Rick who's saying, having, no compassion. We have to do the mission. We have to do what we're doing.
And just leave them. They're slowing you
Right.
down. Just leave them.
Right. And then there's the realization that may cost him his family.
Right.
And it's not worth that. And then you have Glenn on the other side, who's, compassion and humanity for Nicholas gets him killed.
Right. I agree. And
so, yeah, I mean, it's just it's a huge battle constantly between those two sides of the coin.
and those two sides in the same people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my last good, and I said it initially, but it just was so sad. The whole episode was so sad, and it just built and built. And I felt like, because of that pervasive sadness, for me, and this is going back to Coda, Beth's death was really shocking, and it was really a throwaway death. I felt like I was just so incredibly sad throughout this whole episode that, although I was shocked to see Glenn go, I wasn't as shocked. It kind of drew me in and drew me along.
Right.
So what about your goods?
Man, I got a ton.
Go for it.
Well, first, no African Americans were killed in the making of this episode.
But we did potentially kill an Asian American, so maybe we're going to get some new grief.
That's and a lot of Alexandrians.
That's right.
But that's a good thing. That was a cool thing. I was glad to see that. And I'm digging how these first three episodes have taken place entirely in one day.
Right.
And I just think that that's so cool. And they've had seasons that have taken place over a month or over a week and a half or 2 weeks or something. But this is like kind of like these three episodes are a couple of hours, or even the same hours.
Or
And
that 45-minute timer for the casserole.
right, exactly. And I'm wondering if they're going to have the entire first half of season 6, because now we're going to get the next episode as a complete flashback.
Right.
And then, we'll probably pick up, with Abraham and Daryl maybe in real time, and then go back to what happened with Rick, and eventually find out what happened with the dumpster and everything else. But I'm wondering if we're going to end up with basically a half a season that's a 24-hour period.
We could very easily.
I think that would be so freaking awesome. And I just, I applaud. I applaud.
I love that, but I do think, and people point this out all the time, you run into issues with characters who are going to potentially age out of their roles, like Chandler Riggs or like Carl. If you're filming something over several months to a year,
right.
and you've got someone who's supposed to look essentially the same, you run into some trouble there.
Right.
But it will happen. Whatever happens will happen, and I think it would be fascinating to have the first half be crammed into such a short period of time.
Yeah, I just think it's, again, creative storytelling,
right.
and just for me makes it so much more enjoyable, because it's happening on multiple levels as opposed to just the traditional linear story. We talked about Rick going full Shane in the RV. And then about the morality, the credible liability of morality. So I won't go over that again. Boy, I loved Rick's fight with the
wolves.
With the wolves.
Yeah.
Oh man, because it's like Rick's always ready, even when he's not. That's the note I've got here. I wrote down when that whole scene, I was like, Rick is always ready, even when he's not, because they overpower him. They come out of nowhere. He's totally unprepared and alone, and yet he just turns it around on them in a matter of seconds and takes them both out. Then picks up the machine gun and just through the wall takes
right.
all the rest of them out. No questions asked. It was just badass.
And so I have to tell you, the entire RV scene just felt like such a callback to season 2, to Andrea and the RV walker. And it just brought so much of that for me.
And of course, remember, Glenn was the one who was always working on the RV.
Right.
And now the RV's broke down.
Right, exactly. And that is such a perfect moment.
Tons and tons of that. I've got some notes further down of all the callbacks. I loved it. I'll talk to that in 1 minute.
I did too, so it'll be fun to go over those.
I loved how the groups, how the episodes keep splitting the groups into smaller groups. So in the premiere, you had basically half of the entire cast at the quarry. Right. And then the rest of the cast back at Alexandria. So the whole thing is split into like 2. Then in episode 2, JSS, the team A gets split into 2 separate groups. You get Team Rick and then Team Daryl, which is Daryl, Abraham, and Sasha.
Right.
And now in episode 3, Team Rick gets split into 3 more groups. You've got Rick by himself, you got Glenn and Michonne with some stragglers, and now you still got Daryl and Abraham. And it's just every episode, it just keeps dividing, you know what I mean? And getting smaller groups. And it's just another creative storytelling way. And I applaud Scott Gimple here, because it's like the move they made with when the prison fell.
Right.
They took everybody and scattered them, and then spent, the season, the first half of that season, I guess, telling their individual stories, and then knitting them all together.
And once again, it gives a really good opportunity for character development for people that we haven't necessarily seen a lot of.
Absolutely. Because when you've got, a sea of characters on the screen, you can't have much character development. You can't have those moments like Michonne and Heath, or Glenn and Nicholas
Right.
had in these. So I think that's really cool, and it's a great way for the show. But it felt natural; it didn't feel forced. So let's see. I'm not. A lot of people are making a lot of stuff out about Rick's hand getting cut,
Ugh. Yeah,
and
I agree.
I'm just not obsessing about that.
So
I think it's just a misdirect.
I
You
do
know,
too.
I think he cut his hand. Just remember how when Abraham got cut by Sasha?
We've totally seen this before. I mean,
Yeah.
a cut is not something that's going to take you out. A bite is going to take you out.
Well, I mean,
Or a fatal cut is going to take you
well,
out.
there is the whole aspect of the fact that the walkers carry an infection that kills you, and or intent, right? I mean, the fever and everything else. So if that's what the bite causes,
But
but
so I've heard a couple of different theories. I mean, one of the theories I've heard is, we're all infected. When we die, and we come back, period.
right, and that's not a theory. That's
Right. We
that's
know
that's
that.
that's canon. Yeah.
But what I've also heard is that it has to be a bite that
No.
speeds it up. That it's not,
Well, the bite,
or a
the
bite
bite,
or a
does speed it-
scratch or
the bite
something.
does, the bite speeds it up because the bite causes its own infection
Right.
that kills you, and then once you die, you come back.
Kind of like a secondary infection that is related to and activates the infection that we all carry, but it's not
Correct.
the same. But
Correct.
I don't think that, I mean, they've shown over and over again that exposure to blood, just simple exposure to blood, doesn't do that.
Well, they pour guts all over themselves,
Right.
but there is a storyline in the comics that is actually coming up that involves Negan, and I won't spoil, but there is a segment where they use as weapons
Oh.
zombie gut covered weapons.
So it'll be interesting to see if they
Right. It'll be interesting to see if
incorporate
they
that.
go with that or not. But I think they were just again trying to, kind of misdirect people and have a callback to what happens to him in the book with the loss of the hand.
Right. I think so too.
Yeah, because I think if there was really, if there was an infection setting in like from a bite, you have to cut off the limb quickly.
Right.
And he certainly isn't seems like he's not in a rush to do that. So, but it was kind of cool how it happened. I mean, he broke his blade, I think, right on the head of one of them. And so he grabbed the machete that was stuck through another zombie
And then
but
cut
he had to
himself with
grab it
that.
by the hand. Right. He had to grab it by the
Yeah.
hand, by the blade to pull it out. And, that was pretty gruesome. Let's see. I'm going to save this for ugly. There was, without getting too much, well, maybe I'll save that for last as well, because I'm trying to avoid the Glenn stuff because I want to talk about that as my ugly.
Right, because we know that's just going to be huge.
Right. I thought there was some cool foreshadowing. Remember in the season finale last season when Glenn is left, when Glenn and Nicholas are having their battle in the woods, and I think it's when Glenn gets shot, and then they struggle or whatever, and a bunch of zombies come out of nowhere,
Right.
and they swarm over Glenn. Remember that? And then they cut to commercial, and everybody was like, "Oh, freaking Glenn's gone." You know what I mean?
And then they never explained it.
Well, no, they came back and showed that he struggled out. He struggled his way out of it, and I think, if I remember right, maybe they didn't show it, but he obviously didn't get munched. But it seems like that was a bit of foreshadowing to this.
And there are people who have talked about other foreshadowing, like the image of Glenn over the trough with a bat behind his head.
Right.
The image of Glenn just taking his Herschel's watch out of his backpack for no reason during this episode. Other things that kind of foreshadowed what happened.
Well, absolutely, and that's a nice segue for the next good I had, which was all the callbacks to the premiere episode.
They were so good, weren't they?
And to the first episode, and to Guts, which was the second episode. Obviously, calling Rick the dumbass, which that was kind of obvious. But also, the first time Glenn speaks to Rick is on the walkie-talkie, and now the last time is on the walkie-talkie.
Oh, that just makes me so sad.
Both episodes, the premiere and this episode, ended with Rick trapped in a vehicle surrounded by walkers.
Right.
But that was kind of interesting. The Glenn and Nicholas get trapped in an alley, just like Rick and Glenn did in Guts,
I
which
felt
was
like
the
that
second
was a
episode.
huge callback to Atlanta.
Yep,
I'm glad you saw that
yep. And
too.
they go up the fire escape, and in this case, the fire escape is blocked.
Yep.
Um, and then, of course, there was the callback, not in this episode, but an episode ago when he said, "I'm supposed to be delivering pizza."
Right.
So uh,
I have a
there
couple of
was
others if you.
of callbacks.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What?
So Glenn looked at Michonne and said, "We all have a job to do." So
Yeah,
we have heard that from Herschel, we've heard it from Maggie, and we've heard it
yeah,
from Beth. So I think that it really shows that he was integrated into that family. And it's
yeah.
just a callback to Herschel and Beth.
Wow, that's a really nice way to look at that. I think you're right. That's
And
cool.
then I just felt like the whole Winnebago thing was a callback to Dale and the
Yeah,
closeness between Glenn and Dale, and your point that the Winnebago wouldn't start at the very end.
right, right.
Um, I felt like the scenes with Michonne, Heath, and the guy who was shot in the leg, I can't remember his name. He's actually Sonequa Martin Green's husband.
Yes, yes.
Uh, the scenes of them going through the stream, for me, that totally reminded me of when Sophia was lost.
Oh, that's a cool callback. No, I hadn't thought of that.
So I
To
just
me, the
felt,
stream was a very specific symbolism.
oh, good. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that when you're ready to.
Well, Michonne and Heath were great, and I think clearly she's not like Rick. She follows Rick. She agrees with Rick, but she is not Rick, and she was definitely more ready to fight for the Alexandrians. You know what I mean? And I thought that was cool. But then I loved the line. Obviously, the best line was, have you ever been covered in so much blood that you didn't
Yes.
know if it was yours or Walker's or your friends?
Yes.
And, that really was the defining difference between, what he thought, he knew and what he really doesn't know. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's properly worded, but, he's like, well, I've been on runs. I know what it's like. And she's like, no, you don't know until you've been covered in, the blood of your friends, or walkers, or, you can't tell the difference. Of course, then Heath gets covered in the blood of his friends and it's all over his face and everything else. And when they get to that water,
That
and
was the moment when he looked
he's
into the water.
right. And to me, it was very symbolic of a baptism.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she was, teaching him, and he was being baptized in the way of the real world. And now he got it. You know what I mean? Now he's covered in zombie guts and blood of his friends, but he's made it home, and he's survived, and he's learned, and he's a different person now, I think. So that's, he's had a bit of a christening or a baptism.
Yeah. An awakening.
An awakening. That's right. Let's see. I loved how the Alexandrian story. I don't know why Dave. It was Glenn's story. That he lost his past life, met someone in the apocalypse, fell in love, that changed him, gave him purpose. I mean, that's Glenn and Maggie all the way. Of course, then his death foreshadows Glenn's death as well. But those were most of my goods. I had a bunch of other stuff in there that pertained to Glenn that I jumped over because I'll cover it when we talk about Glenn.
Which, of course, is going to be the whole ugly.
That's right. So what was your bads?
So, I didn't have very many. I would have to say, I initially kind of felt like Denai Guerrera was playing Michonne as fairly one-dimensional, but then I realized as I was watching the episode move on, she is just focused and freaked out. So she's not being unidimensional. She is really just trying to pull everyone through the situation and get them back to Alexandria. Right. So it's not so much my bad. It was just it initially started out as a bad, and I realized that I was misreading the character. I definitely feel like the having Daryl split off and then rejoin, for me that was a bad, because I felt like he didn't accomplish anything with splitting off, and I'm not even really sure what he did with all of that time other than run around on his really cool bike.
No, I agree with you, and I didn't mean to imply that I thought that was a great sequence. What I thought was that the Daryl coming back to Abraham and Sasha,
Right.
they were thankful for that, because then the camera pulls back and you see, the two of them in a car is pretty harrowing when you're leading, 20,000 zombies to be alone. You know what I mean?
And
So
Sasha made the point that, they could potentially be overwhelmed if they didn't
right,
have
and they
Daryl's
didn't
help.
want him to leave. I mean, both of them said they didn't want him to leave. So his coming back was a relief, and I'm sure they were thankful for. But I totally agree with you that I didn't really understand the logic of his departure, and then he hears he gets the message, or he's trying to communicate with Rick, and he hears that something's not going right. I guess, right? Is that what we're supposed to be implied, that he hears over the walkie-talkie that something's not right?
I'm not even really
Like he
sure
hears the
because
fight
at
on.
that point, is he close enough to Alexandria that it would have made more sense for him to go back and help there? I mean,
I
I don't
And
know.
it seemed like he stopped. He was trying to reach Rick, and then there was some sort of noise on the walkie, that was because that was right when Rick was fighting with the wolves. So the implication I got was that he picked up some of that, and that that didn't sound right to him. So he wanted to turn around and go back, but he didn't go around back to where Rick was.
Right.
He went back to Sasha and Abraham. So that confused me.
Yeah, I didn't really get it either, and I just kind of felt like I just didn't really get the point.
And I didn't really understand what Rick was doing with the RV, other than he was supposed to try to use the RV to distract the group of walkers that had pulled off from the main group and get them back on somehow. I didn't understand, because he was supposed to meet them at that split, right?
Right. And I agree with you. I don't really know either. I didn't, I kind of felt like he was trying to go back to Alexandria, but at the same time, he gave that big speech about not going back and not making it about them, but making it about the survivors, the people in Alexandria. So yeah, that was kind of confusing.
Yeah. So the whole motivation for Rick's mission, and what Daryl was trying to accomplish, for me was not clear and not well articulated. So I would also put that down as a bad.
So one of my other bads was, when are they just going to learn to put people out of their misery? I mean, that poor guy who was being squished against the fence, who was so clearly dying and dying in agony. Why not just double tap the poor guy?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know?
Totally agree. It was just, there's no reason to sit there. I mean, when you had Glenn and Noah trapped inside the revolving door,
Right.
it made complete sense.
Because there was no way to really help
No, if he
Noah.
tried to shoot him through the glass, he'd run the risk of, first of all, it not going through the glass and deflecting and being a ricochet inside with him,
Right.
or goes through the glass but then shatters the glass and having all those zombies on top of him.
Right.
So there was just no way. But there's no reason. They got the fence between them. Put the guy out of his mercy.
Yeah. Do a
His
mercy
misery. I
kill.
mean,
Yep.
yeah. Same thing with the girl. When she fell down, kind
Yeah.
of sacrificed herself. I mean, they should have just turned around
And
and
popped her.
put her out of her misery too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it makes for more gore and more violence, and that part of the whole zombie movie thing.
And maybe it just shows that some of the people aren't that hardened yet, you know? I mean, I expect someone like Michonne to be that hardened, but I kind of don't expect that from the people from Alexandria yet.
Yeah, I don't see. I wouldn't see that as being hard. I would see that as being
It would be
merciful.
right, it's
Merciful.
kind, but
Yeah,
you also have to have that certain amount of steel in your backbone.
yeah, that's true.
I don't know what your history is, but I've watched people die and I've known that they were going to die, and it still is devastating.
Ouch.
So
Nope, haven't done that. Only animals.
yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my last bad was, could Nicholas and Glenn, had all things been equal, had things worked out, could they have found some way to survive on the top of that dumpster until somebody came to help them out? I mean, there were so many zombies, I don't really think so, but that question was definitely in my head.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly there's the possibility, they just have to keep their balance, and
Right.
there was no way for the zombies to climb it and get their teeth into them. But I didn't see any possible, escape that way.
No, I didn't either. I really
You
felt like
know,
they were going to have someone come and fish them out.
right,
But I just wondered, if they had managed to keep their cool, if they could have held out.
right, or even maybe try to open it up on one side and get in
Yeah.
and close the lid on it, and then just ride it out.
Oh,
You know what I
that's a
mean?
really good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, why didn't they try to go up that fire escape? I know it had stuff in front of it, but then you climb, you climb over that. I mean, if
Yeah.
you could get to the roof, you'd be good.
And maybe if it had just been Glenn, and this kind of goes back to Glenn in the first season, who was always the person who was in and out by himself. And maybe if it had been Glenn who wasn't carrying that burden of saving somebody,
Yeah, that's
maybe he
that.
would have done it.
Yeah, there was definitely that sense that he was making a lot of bad decisions, letting Nicholas, having so much faith in Nicholas, and he seemed wise about it at different points earlier when Nicholas offers to help, and Glenn's like, no, you're not
Right.
ready, and all right, well, if you're gonna, then you got to do everything I say, and he seemed like he was much more practical about it, and then in this episode he was just like, come on, show me the way. You were here, you can do this, I believe in you, and show me, you know what I mean. And it was kind of like Rick when he turned and the Alexandrians were being, attacked by that small group, and he's like, "Come on, you guys can do this," blah
Right.
blah blah. I was like, "Why all of a sudden are you having, this change of faith? It's only been an hour." You know what I mean?
And it
So,
goes back to what we said last week. The only person who's not taking chances anymore is Carol.
oh yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely, I think that it's hard to believe that someone like Glenn, would get caught in this kind of a scenario.
Right.
And I think overall that's a bad throughout the episode because the zombies are slow, and how does anyone ever get surrounded by them, even the wounded, so it
I
just
think it
seemed
go
like
it does go back to what Morgan said in the first episode to Rick though when Rick was leaving for Atlanta. If you're just around one or two, they don't seem very scary, they're slow, they're not very threatening. But boy, if
right.
you get surrounded, if you get in the middle of a horde,
Yeah, I know. I just felt there was a lot of contrived obstacles
there
that,
were.
the twisted
Yeah,
ankle and the shot leg and all this, and there was a lot of Alexandrians that died. A
absolutely.
lot of red shirts. So did you have any other bads?
I didn't, do you?
I mentioned at the top that I just felt like there wasn't as much creative use of film in this episode compared to the previous two episodes, in the way that things were shot and the way the story was told. But that's not a huge issue.
And that may
Uh,
just be that we had a new director, someone who hadn't really
yeah,
tried his hand at directing this particular series before.
yeah, that could be. And then we talked about it wasn't clear for me what Rick was doing and Darrow was doing, and I think too many Alexandrians died. I would like to see some more of them live.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's budgetary constraints. If they have them on for so many times, then they have to become a regular cast member. It's a different pay rate and all that other stuff.
Oh, that's a good point. I never thought
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, probably. I'm guessing, but yeah, those were my bads.
So now to the ugly.
Oh yeah,
So we talked last week about how in this world, every action has consequences.
right.
And one of our listeners, James Chapman, made that point too. He wrote a pretty long email or a pretty long post on our Facebook page about that. But I just kind of went through and started listing things. So Glenn let Nicholas live. Maggie and Tara, in the beginning of this season, made the decision to let Nicholas live. I mean, they had that pretty lengthy
Right,
conversation about
right,
what Nicholas had done.
right.
Morgan let those wolves escape and they came back on Rick.
Yeah,
Glenn actually decided, so he told Rick that he wanted to go with Rick. And Rick said, no, 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 go with Michonne.
right,
So he could have avoided the whole scenario altogether if he had been able to follow his initial impulse and go with Rick to the
right,
RV.
right.
Um,
That's a
Nick
good point.
Nicholas having to administer the coup de grace to the person who was part of a team that he had left behind.
Right. I think that was the straw that that
that
broke
broke
his
him.
back.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. And it's just the whole idea of finish what you started. And then I would say we talked about it before and you brought it up, but definitely Michonne telling Heath, setting Heath straight and finishing up by saying, then you don't know.
Right.
That was such a powerful moment in this episode. I felt like it was a really defining moment.
Well, the other, let me chime in there because when Michonne says to Heath, have you ever been, I'm going to go back to the same line. I've already repeated it once, but I'm going to repeat it again because
It's
it's a
okay.
great
It's a
line.
great line.
Have you ever been covered in so much blood that you didn't know if it was yours or Walker's or your friends?
Yes.
And that's what happened to Glenn.
Yes.
And
as you pointed out, what happened to Heath?
Well, it's what happened to Heath, yes, but it's also a foreshadowing of what then happens to Glenn at the very, very end.
Absolutely.
But it's also a bit of a clue, in my opinion, because I'm sure we will talk a little bit about
some of the theories
and what's going on there and what we think happened. But have you ever been covered in so much blood that you didn't know?
Right.
You don't know if it's yours or Walker's or your friends. So we don't know.
I agree with
blood
you.
Is. Whose blood that is and whose guts that is. I mean, I feel I know, but we don't know for sure.
I agree.
If Glenn survives, lots of people are complaining that it would be, like a cheap trick and it would undermine the episode. And I completely disagree.
I do too. I think one of the things The Walking Dead is really good at, and Kirkman is king of this, is misdirection.
Oh yeah, and I have no problem with it. Maybe because I'm a comic book reader, and the heroes often survive on unbeatable odds, or they often are in situations where you think they're dead and then they come back. But I just you want the heroes to have awesome escapes from the clutches of death.
Right.
So I would have no problem with that, and I think it's funny that people are freaking out about it. And in fact, if anything, it's brilliant. Look at the number. It's the number one thing we're talking about in regard to this episode.
Someone pointed out that several days later, it was still trending hugely on Facebook.
Yeah, I think Laura did.
Yeah.
It was Tuesday, and it was still
like the number one trend.
Number one trend on Facebook. So that's 2 days after the show. So that means everybody's talking about it. There are articles on the Huffington Post.
Yes, everywhere.
There's articles on Forbes. There's article everywhere. So, not that this is a show that needs more attention and fandom, but it never hurts.
Exactly.
But I mean, talk about intelligent, smart marketing and storytelling to just keep people guessing. And Kirkman, you made a really great point. Kirkman does this a lot, and it seems like he always did in his comic, and almost every single issue ends with a big cliffhanger, usually almost a full page image at the very end of almost every single issue. I'm
having a visual image of the governor from one of the governor comic books. Just that
now,
big.
Sometimes you find out in the next episode, in the next issue, that it wasn't such a big thing.
But you don't know.
But you don't know.
Right.
And sometimes you find out it is a big thing. And he is. And it seems like they're just getting better and better at integrating that storytelling style to the TV show.
I agree.
And doing, I think they tried to do it a few times in the beginning in the same exact fashion that they do the comic book, and it wasn't really working out. But it just seems like as the show gets on, they get more sophisticated and better at that kind of storytelling technique, but doing it in a way that works on TV. And I think this is just a perfect example.
I do too, because, I still think we really don't know.
Absolutely, we don't know. There was an interesting interview with producer David Albert on MTV, on the website, MTV website. I wanted to read it, a section or a couple sections of it.
Go for it.
He said, I feel like Glenn has always been the guy that's given everybody that second chance, given everybody the opportunity to improve themselves. He's the guy who's never killed anybody in cold blood. He's always been that guy. So the moment last night, regardless of what's happened to Glenn, the Glenn as good angel, I believe, is dead. Then goes
Oh,
on to say, Glenn saved Nicholas and brought Nicholas back, and Nicholas did this to him. Nicholas couldn't actually hack it and copped out in the worst possible way. I mean, there's a million ways in which he could have done the same thing. Nicholas could have just jumped off the dumpster and
right.
actually tried to help Glenn. That might have given him some space to get away. But Nicholas shot himself in the head, took Glenn down with him. So that was the cost of having been a good guy. So that good guy, Glenn, regardless of what has happened to Glenn, is gone.
Oh, wow. That is really powerful.
Well, it's interesting because to me, it's a clue that Glenn is probably going to survive this, but he's not going to be the same.
Well,
He's no
and
longer going to be the good, hopeful guy who gives opportunity and second chances.
so a couple of things come up for me with that. One is the whole announcement that Gimple had them read on The Talking Dead, basically
Yep.
saying, yeah, we're going to see Glenn in some way, shape, or form again. The other thing that comes up for me is you had mentioned you were concerned that there was going to be a role reversal for Maggie and Glenn.
Right.
So if we get Glenn back, but we get a Glenn who is so altered in terms of his ability to experience hope, I think that there's a lot more potential for that role reversal that you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But, I think that, it was a really cool thing. And I think there's lots and lots. The more you look at it, there's so many clues, and there's some great articles. I didn't want to post them till after we had recorded, but I'll try to repost them up with that really break the sequence down,
Right.
Obviously when he falls, when they fall together, well, I'll even back up first. One of the theories is that this is all a hallucination on Nicholas's part.
And so what do you think about that? I think of all of the theories, that's probably the weakest one.
I think it is the weakest one, and I think it's the least likely.
Mhm.
Although, again, remember there were lots of visual cues we were being given about how unstable Nicholas was. And the crazy look in his eyes, the weird camera effects when he would have these moments of, seeming to be detached. He certainly is detached when he's looking at Glenn and Glenn's trying to get through to him and grab him by the shoulders.
Look at me. Yeah.
Right. So,
so I think he definitely.
The only thing that lends credence to it is that, and this could be a clue or it could just be a mistake in the production of the film of the episode. But when they're down on the ground before they get on top of the dumpster, they're shooting their weapons
Right.
and the camera shows Glenn when he puts his gun away, or he starts to put his gun in his holster and take out the knife, and you can hear two clicks, and it sounds very much
like Nicholas has run out of ammo.
Nicholas has run out of ammo. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not from Glenn because he's put the gun back in the holster. So the theory is that there was no bullets for Nicholas to shoot himself in the head with. Now, that may be a clue, or it may be that they just weren't, paying attention at editing and missed that those two noises are there, and
that it was a continuity error.
Yeah, that was a continuity error. Exactly. Let's see, there's just before, yeah. So I just said this, since the Nicholas Clear is starting to lose it, we get something, right? Maybe hallucinations. So I'm probably least likely to believe that.
Me too.
But I think that it's clear that he falls on top of him.
I agree.
And the angle of the shot, really, it isn't anatomically correct that the intestines,
which
is what you see coming out. This is really gross, right? That we're talking about this, but the intestines are coming out of his chest.
Exactly.
That's not realistic. So, and if you look as well, there's no blood. There's blood on Glenn's face, but there's no blood coming out of his mouth or his nose.
And it seems to me like the blood that we're seeing, the arterial blood that's coming out, if Glenn were bleeding out that heavily that quickly, we would not see the response that we're seeing from Glenn.
Correct. He would even be rolling his eyes back. He would be going into shock. Instead, he was just horrified. He looked horrified. And I think it's because he's sitting here watching this guy get ripped apart on top of him. Now, if that is the case, getting covered in the goo and the guts might help mask him, right? I mean,
Or it might make them, I've heard other people say it might make them more likely to devour him.
well, that's a possibility too, but it could buy him some time to scooch underneath the dumpster.
That's one of the theories that I had read, is that he escaped by hiding under the dumpster.
And I'm going to even jump because there's a clip in the season 6 preview of Maggie and Aaron out on a mission at nighttime, and I think it's nighttime, and they're in what looks like a sewer. Have you seen those clips?
No.
And when I saw that, I said, I wonder if there's a sewer opening underneath that dumpster.
Which would also be a callback to season 1 and Jackie and
Uh-huh.
them looking for an escape from that department store.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. That was in Guts, right? That was in that
Yeah.
episode Guts. Wow, very cool. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like the continuity of that. The other idea is that somehow the herd gets distracted and he's just underneath there and hiding out there. And perhaps maybe Rick gets the RV going and comes through that town and pulls them out, and then it's kind of a callback to the fact that
Glenn saved him.
Yeah, Glenn saved
Yeah.
Rick when he was trapped, and now Rick has saved Glenn when he was trapped.
And when you look at that last shot of Glenn and that swarm of zombies just covering him, and then the camera pulling back, that camera angle and that camera work is just like the camera pulling back at the end of episode 1, season 1.
Yeah. When they're on the tank, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, there was a lot of callbacks to that. And, yeah. And then, of course, the fact that they're making such vague statements, as opposed to saying he's dead. Stephen Young wasn't on Talking Dead.
But that could also be a misdirect, because we've come to expect people after their big death to be on Talking Dead.
And one theory I heard, and one theory I thought about myself, is that maybe they would bring him back as a zombie.
And there are some people who are saying that Maggie is going to have to put him down.
Right, and then Maggie puts him down. Yeah. And then, maybe Maggie's out searching for him, and that's what we see in that preview clip, and then she finds him as a zombie, which, remember, she thought she was going to find him in the bus after the prison as a zombie.
Right.
Yeah, and has to put him down. But that way maybe the watch gets back to her that way because he pulled the watch out or something. That's a possibility too. But I think,
So
I've
got another one for you, which I thought was kind of funny. But when they interviewed the young lady who played Enid,
oh yeah,
she said, that if we saw her again, we were going to be really happy to see her. So we were going to
be pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
So there are some people who are saying, "Oh, it's going to be Enid to the rescue."
Yeah,
which I thought was an interesting.
Thomas Celtic at Celtic is also mentioned that, tweeted that out, and I think it would be a cool way to see her. I don't know how exactly
they would make it work. Yeah,
how she would do that, but yeah, it would be cool, and she is out there now, so.
So I have to.
And then there's also so that's within the context of the story and the show and what we've seen.
One more thing, though, and you may be bringing this up, but so one of the other things that Gimple said is we'll see Glenn in some small way, or we'll see some small part of Glenn.
Well, right.
I was also thinking about you talking about Maggie potentially being pregnant.
Right. Well,
so, that would be some way of seeing Glenn again, or of keeping some small part of Glenn in the show.
Right.
So.
Right. And then the last thing is there's actually spoiler places online that
which
have
I
posted.
Totally try to avoid.
Yeah, I do too. But it's been hard not to with this particular thing going on. And I guess there are actually pictures online right now that you can see that have him still on set in future episodes being recorded, being filmed.
Although people have pointed out it could be flashbacks. It could.
Well, no, there's a new character that's introduced that's from the comics.
Oh, is that?
They have pictures of him and scenes with him.
Spoiler alert! Is that Jesus?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I mean, technically, they could, keep him on for a period of time and have him, sit in on stuff so that people taking pictures get bum direction. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I don't think they would probably go to that length. And I think the other thing too is that Though this death, if it is true, was story wise was a direct correlation to his character
Hmm.
and the fact that he kept believing in people and trying to help people and give people second chances, and that in the zombie apocalypse, that's going to get you killed.
Yep.
It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Doesn't mean it's not the right thing. You know what I mean? Let me just put that down. But in my opinion, just
But you
my
got to
opinion.
know what the consequence
But you
is.
got to understand that that's a
Yep.
consequence of what you're doing. Exactly. And because the fact of the matter is that there's consequences if you don't do that. If you don't take people in, think of how many times Glenn has saved the day, and he was, because he was taken in by the group, and he was just as bad as the Alexandrians when he was brought into the group. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know how to handle this stuff.
Well, and look at what happened when Rick's group did not initially take Sasha and Tyrese in.
Right. Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Or look what Rick has done by not going back to Alexandria.
Yeah.
May have jeopardized his whole family, and it wouldn't have been worth that in his mind now. So now he's second guessing. So there's consequences for either way that you go. But the fact of the matter is, it would be consistent with his story. But that being said, not a very heroic way for a main character who's been with us since season 1
To go.
to go out.
Although, I read a few things online myself, and one of the points that an author made was the more useless the death, the more powerful the loss.
Well, yeah, and I think I understand that logic, and I agree to some degree, but I think that in this particular kind of story, you want your hero to have
A good death.
a good
Yeah.
death. Yeah, you want him to have, and we've had lesser characters that
Have had better deaths.
I mean, think about T-Dog, who talk about the most undeveloped and underutilized character in the show. They went out of their way to give him, a really good heroic death, where he saves Carol.
Man, don't even get me started. I love Iron E. Singleton, and I feel like he was so underdeveloped. I agree. They could have done so much great stuff with him. His panels, when I hear his interviews from Walker Stalker Con, are awesome.
Yeah. So I would be kind of surprised if this is the way that they chose to go with Glenn. And then the last comment I have about it is that in the comic, again, spoiler alert for people, we know that Glenn goes out in how Glenn goes out in the comic.
Yeah, I do. Okay. Yep.
So everyone's theorizing that it's going to be somebody different because the TV show likes to swap things around. But there was a TV game show that Robert Kirkman and the woman that plays Maggie and somebody else were on, and they asked him something about, it was off the cuff, something about, you can see it on YouTube. And it's that game show that Chris Hardwick does.
Oh, okay.
It's on, I think it's on, is it on MTV? I'm not sure. But anyway, and they asked him something about, about Glenn and or how he was going to die or something. And he said, oh, he's going to get beat to death by Bat, Negan. And everybody was like, what? You know what I mean? I mean, what are you talking about? And so everybody was like, well, now, wait a minute. Is he trying to send us the wrong thing? Is he trying to trick? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm wondering if we aren't being given all of these close calls for Glenn so that we
when
go,
it really
wow,
happens.
they're never going to do it that way because and then that's exactly what happens.
Oh, that's a good point. Yep.
Like he couldn't survive all that and then have them go, the obvious way. Well, then you're not expecting that. So let's go that way. You know what I mean? So, but the fact of the matter is it made for great TV. We're still talking about the show. The internet's blown up about the show. So I poo-poo all those people who, who are saying this is gimmicky and everything else.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's not any gimmicky than anything else that we see on any more gimmicky than anything else we watch on TV. And it's such great conversation and such great mystery.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of the things I don't want to belabor it too much longer, but a couple of the things that I looked at that I thought were really interesting. So one of the authors that I read asked if this is Glenn's death, truly, is Rick going to regain some of his humanity? Is Rick going to suffer so much and experience so much pain around this that somehow he's going to become a little more human?
Right. Right.
I got to tell you, I have to confess, I actually, because of the way that the time difference works up here, I took my life into my hands and watched The Talking Dead first.
Oh my gosh.
I know, which was totally stupid, but I have to agree. Chris Hardwick described it as a bucket of suck.
That was funny.
And that was a pretty good descriptor.
Funny,
So,
yeah. And it definitely seemed like he was clueless.
I agree.
But had also been coached on how to, be vague about it,
How to
they
deflect.
kept what?
How to deflect.
Yeah, and because he kept, potentially he's dead, or possibly, or whatever. It was like there was never, So it's very smart. I mean, I'll be very sad and disappointed if it turns out that he is dead or that he's a zombie. But either way, it's good. It's just made for great. Now they're going to kill us with a 90-minute episode that is going to have nothing to do with it.
And can you believe that they're going to do another 90-minute episode? That's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. And then I think we'll probably get another episode after that may not even yet deal with it. I think it'll be at least 1 to 2 more episodes before, obviously one, but I suppose they could still do some main story stuff in the 90-minute, but I don't think so. I think we're going to get just Morgan the whole time.
Which I think will be good because it will answer a lot of the questions that we have about Morgan.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be good in a really sick way because it's going to prolong our agony a little bit further.
Yeah.
I don't mind that. That just makes me more interested for the episode that comes after that.
Yeah. Well, it also, people are going to keep tuning in because they're going to want to find out. And I'll donuts to whatever the expression is.
Dollars to donuts.
Yeah. We'll see some increases in the ratings would be my guess.
I bet you we do too.
So we basically had the same ugly.
We did. I mean, I just could not. You couldn't get past that as your ugly. It was so perfectly done.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other thing that really stood out for me again was Michonne's putting Heath in his place. And just the whole iteration again of every action has consequences.
Yeah.
Everything you do matters.
Yeah.
So before we wrap it up, do you have a zombie kill of the week?
Zombie kill of the week.
I didn't really have one. I'll be honest. There were so many Zeds, and it was just, I was so overwhelmed by the time we got to what happened with Glenn that I did not have a zombie kill of the week.
I think probably the zombie kill for me was Rick's kills on the road.
Yeah.
I just thought that it was just it was brutal, harsh, quick, and it was just business.
It was very efficient.
Yeah, he came upon them. At this point there's no fear, there's no anxiety, there's barely even any stress that seems to be involved. It's just business as usual. It's an obstacle. I have to deal with it. I use whatever I have available. My thing breaks, I take the one that's sticking out of them. It's just boom, boom, boom.
Okay, you just gave me another moment. So I know this was not a callback, but think about Rick taking on the Claimers versus Rick taking on this small horde of zombies. Yeah. And how different he is and how different it was.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? Because the Claimers were people, and he had to,
but still,
animalistic.
They were horrible people, and they were people that were in the way, and they were people that were standing between him and his family. Right. And that's pretty much the way these zombies were too. And I just think that it just shows the progression of Rick in terms of, you're right. He's got that rigid armor, and he's just going to do whatever it takes to get where he needs to go.
Right.
And there was definitely fear and anxiety and trauma around the whole episode with the Claimers. I just think that the difference for me, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I think that he, his coldness and his machine likeness and his brutality is understandable, but
I agree.
it definitely gets in the way of his decision making. I mean, if there's one thing you can count on, it's that Rick is going to make bad decisions.
At least right now. I
Well,
agree.
no, I mean it's kind of part of his whole personality, it seems, but certainly the last for a while, but uh, this whole concept, this whole idea of doing this herd was just crazy,
Yeah.
and each time every time you turn around, it's like going bad on him. It's going sideways.
It definitely is.
Yeah, I'm still curious as to, more about the wolves. I mean, we took out the two main wolf guys,
Right.
so I don't know if that means that they're over, but I would love still some explanation as to why they hit then and how they could have possibly known that that was like the best possible time. Maybe they were just watching
Mm-hmm.
and they noticed that everybody left or a lot of the key people left. And so that they figured now's our opportunity. Or did Enon let them in? Or, is there more wolves that are even higher up that are more organized and planning stuff, that we haven't met yet?
I think it's a bigger group. I
Yeah.
do. I think that we have not seen the last of the wolves. I could be completely wrong, but I just think that there's a lot more out there. There's a much broader world, as we both know, and I think that the wolves are a bigger group than what we've seen.
It'll be interesting. I'm kind of thinking that this is probably the end of the wolves.
Are ya?
Yeah, and I'll be kind of disappointed that
If they
but
hang on to it.
no, if they don't,
Okay.
explain it, if they don't explain it a little bit more, but I don't think they will. I think now we're gonna work towards the horde.
Uh-huh.
I think between now and near the end of the season, it's gonna be getting to, back to Alexandria and defending against that horde. And then it's, that's going to be crazy.
Right. I bet
There is a are you up to that point in the comic or past that point?
So, I've got to be honest with you. I'm rereading that Alexandria stuff right now because it didn't stick for me. A lot of it didn't stick for me, so I'm going back and rereading it now. So
Right.
I know, ultimately what happens to Glenn in the comic book, like we talked about. I was thinking about there are some things that happen in terms of Rick's relationships with other people that do
Right.
humanize him and make him a little softer.
Right.
And so it's going to be interesting to see if any of that plays out, but I definitely need to reread, and I am getting caught back up on Alexandria.
Well, the reason I was asking was because the up to the horde portion, because there's this whole horde thing is a reinterpretation of the comic book.
It's a pretty early thing in Alexandria too, if I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So I'm beyond that, but I need to go back and look at that.
There is an incredible fight sequence that I'm looking forward to. I'm sure that they'll do it.
So
But
you think it's going to be the mid-season finale?
oh, that could be.
Yeah.
That could be. The one I'm talking about, where they just it's like Abraham, I think, in the comic. Abraham, Michonne, Rick. I don't remember who else. I think Morgan. And they just take out an endless amount of them.
An endless horde. Yeah.
Endless amount, and they just keep going and going and going and going, and they just don't think they're going to be able to do it, but they don't give up. And it's brutal, and it's wild.
That would make for some great TV. And
that for a great finale.
That would make for some great direction from Greg Nicotero.
Yeah.
That would be really nice.
Yeah. So that about wraps up the episode, right?
Yeah, I think we should probably get to some feedback, huh?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
So I think I'm going to start with a letter from Leslie Cox.
Okay.
And she wrote about thank you, and here's what she has to say. Well, poop. It's taken me it's taken me ages to work out how I feel about this one. It was a good episode, but I'm only giving it 4.0 self-inflicted headshots.
I love that. Love that.
I'm an emotional wreck at this point. The good. They built up the tension really well, and I enjoyed the interplay between Michonne and Heath, where she told him a few home truths about what I think he got, which I think he got, and her other leadership skills. The bad, the way they took Glenn out, and the ambiguity they've left us with, hence my lower than usual score. I wanted closure. I wanted to know if my feeling so upset was relevant. I think that if they bring him back, as some people are suggesting, and it was Nicholas hallucinating, I'm going to be annoyed because I'd see that as a cheap shot. I don't want Glenn to be dead, of course, but I don't. But I don't want to be messed with either. I don't mind cliffhangers. The one with Rick in the RV is fine, but not Glenn. That hasn't worked for me.
Yeah. I think the hallucination would be cheap, and I think that I don't think they'll go that way.
I think that we have both agreed that's least likely, and I agree. I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be cheap if they bring Glenn back, if Glenn somehow escapes, but we'll
hallucination
see.
would be that borders on Dallas and the guy thinking he had a dream. Yeah.
Yes, I've heard that. And then so Leslie's ugly. She said the ugly. It's a bad ugly. The way they let people get eaten alive by the walkers and don't put them out of their misery when they could have. Thank you. I totally agree. Yeah. I'm thinking particularly about the Alexandrian. Was it David who was stuck against the gates being eaten? One knife thrust would have sorted that all out, and I don't know why they didn't do the mercy kill, especially for him in those circumstances. Anyway, I can think of loads more to say, but I don't want to use up all of your page. And then she puts a grin, and she also welcomed me, which was very nice, and I want to say thanks for that.
Good letter, Leslie.
Yeah.
The next one we have is from Lori, Samalian. Thank you. That's the name of the episode.
It is a little confusing.
OMG, Walking Dead writers, you suck. I can't watch this shit again. How dare you kill Glenn? Fucking bullshit. I'm just devastated. Okay, so, Lori. We got you. We hear you.
Gotta tell you, I know Lori, and she put a post on my personal Facebook page that said, my husband has told me I am no longer allowed to watch The Walking Dead. And I said, you can't do that. Not now that I've got a gig with Biters. You're stuck, man. You have to keep watching.
That's right.
Okay, so then we have feedback from Susan Ugly, and it says, the biters are alive. Yay, biters. Thank you for uploading. I guess I can speak for all of those millions and millions of biters podcast fans. That's funny. Galaxy-wide.
All right, we're now interstellar. I like it.
How glad we are that you got that motorhome started, escaped the Walker Horde, and made it to the studio. Yeah, that was super nice. Not much time for a longer mail. However, let me say this. The Walking Dead Season 6 has started absolutely awesome. So far, we've had a string of wow episodes that kept us on the edge of our seats. Special effects and Walker's Greg Nicotero at his best are just unreal. Keep in mind, this is a TV show, not a multi-million-dollar movie production. Even though some of our heroes' plans and actions seem questionable, I'll leave the full analysis of that to Kirk, the Knight of Metaphors.
the dark Knight of Metaphors.
There you go. I'm looking at your Skype face right now. The Dark Knight, exactly.
There you go.
Let's see. The way the showrunners have let us reach new levels of suspense excuses one or two flaws in the script. All hail Carol, who in the same episode prepares a tasty spring cleansing casserole at the same time cleanses Alexandria of the Wolves almost on her own in best Assassin's Creed fashion.
She did look like the guy from Assassin's Creed, man.
I don't play it, but it's totally true.
I don't play it either, but you can't escape the imagery. It's all over the place. So, yeah.
And then she says, bear with me, I'm wearing my bifocals, which is kind of painful. Not me. She didn't say that. I said that. She says, I almost got a heart attack when Glenn fell prey to the walkers. So sorry to see him go. He was the season 1 cast member who, in my mind, had the strongest character development. In retrospect, Glenn's death was foreshadowed, and it's always the good guys who seem to have to go. And I hate Nicholas, don't we all? I rate the past 3 episodes with 4.69 puppy dog skeletons out of 5. Glad you're back, biters.
That's a great letter, Susan.
That was really great.
So Laura Willie Swink wrote, thank you, ... or no thank you, AMC, you rotten bastards. Diane and Kirk, sorry this is not short.
No, we're glad it's not
Buckle
short.
Buckle up, folks. We're in for a ride. Wow. Last night's show started off with a bang, began to sputter a bit in the middle, and then just completely went ape whiz crazy. If I'm not wrong, I think that is the most known character deaths we've ever had in one episode, even if they were characters we just met, especially one very possibly significant death. My initial reaction was that I really liked the episode as entertainment, but it left me so anxious, empty, and heartbroken that I could not really enjoy it. And as I began to analyze parts of it, I actually started to get a bit angry with it. But first, here are my goods. Daryl on his hog.
There
That
we
sounds
go.
dirty. That sounds dirty. Daryl on his hog.
Woo!
Honestly, I could have watched another 20 minutes of Mr. Dixon burning rubber. Okay, now we're getting into fantasy land. Watch out. But it felt as though they just threw him in there to have a bit of Daryl screen time.
Right?
I agree.
Yep.
Because his backtracking to Alexandria and then back again had no purpose except as a distraction.
Very good, Laura.
What?
Very good. I agree with her. Laura.
Yeah, I agree with her too.
Yeah.
Rick taking out the wolves in pure crazy Rick fashion. I think this is the first time since season 1 that Rick looked completely lost and hopeless. I don't know about that. It just looks crazy.
Yeah. And I'm thinking back to when he lost Lori.
Yeah. That's when he was hopeless.
Yeah.
Nick's brain matter across Glenn's face. So Nicholas's.
Yeah, so when Nick shot himself.
Nick's brain matter across Glenn. Yeah, that was pretty gross. Just the sheer shock of that scene was intense. You see, I thought that was kind of like, why did they have to do that? But the benefit of that too was that then when he fell down into the zombies,
you understand.
Well, no, he also looks like he's got blood all over his face.
Good
know what
point.
I'm saying? Yeah. But the fact that his cowardice finally did bring about Glenn's fate brought me back to Rick's words. People like him are going to die eventually, somehow.
Wow.
If Nick had chilled for 5 more minutes, or Willie Glenn would have found a way to get out of that fix.
See?
Our Wiley Glenn would have found a way to get out of that fix. Yeah, maybe. But he freaked out and did himself in, supposedly taking Glenn with him. She put supposedly. I like that. Now, here are my bads. I do think Glenn is dead. Oh, poop on you, Laura. to use Leslie Cox's vernacular. I do think Glenn is dead. And if he is not, this is where I will have some issues with The Walking Dead. Honestly, if they didn't kill Glenn, I don't know if I can take the writers seriously anymore. They have teased us. I know they have teased us Glenn's death so many times. Well, why wouldn't? So what's one more time? Right? I mean, by now it's becoming comical.
Right. And so this is The Walking Dead, right? Everybody could potentially die at any moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
So if this is just another near miss death for Glenn, it's going to cheapen the impact of this episode and cheapen the show. As much as I hate the thought, Glenn has to be dead for this show to maintain credibility. Game of Thrones would never have a main character death and then say, just kidding. Or would they? Wink, wink. GOT viewers. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but haven't there been people who have come back from being dead on Game of Thrones?
So my husband is the Game of Thrones watcher in the household, but my understanding is that there's a lot of discussion that Jon Snow is not actually dead.
Well, plus there have been characters over the years that have died and then been either brought back through magic or actually die, and you thought they did. And I think I don't watch the show, but
we only live in the world of zombies. We don't live in the world of magic. So
I don't know. I think zombies are kind of magical, but I'm weird like that. Why didn't Michonne mercy kill David? Yeah, I think we're all in agreement there, right?
Yeah, sounds like.
Maybe that was done to, again, foreshadow Glenn.
Possible.
Maybe that was a choice. Maybe the writer said, you know what, let's let this guy get eaten. Let's not have them mercy kill him because it foreshadows, it'll help, add more to that whole ending. Especially after she seemed to connect with him and assured him he would be getting home.
Which I thought was a really cheap shot when she knew he was bit. That's just me putting that 2 cents in there.
Well, yeah, except that I think she was like, you're going to die. You're going to die, but I'm going to get you home so you can say goodbye.
Yeah. Nah.
And that in this world, in this point in the world, that's super important. I mean, that's all you got.
Yeah, it's true.
But I don't know, maybe not. It was out of character for someone who ran through the hermit in the woods Let's see. It was so out of character for someone who, quote, ran through the hermit in the woods just because he wouldn't shut up. Oh, right. I remember that. The episode where they came upon, right. This is right after she joined the group and they went on a mission to go to Mayberry RFD is what I always call it. Friggin' Woodbury.
Right.
And remember they go into this like cabin and it turns out there's some like, you know, hobo guy that lives there or whatever, hermit, and she just takes him out because he's making too much noise and all the zombies are coming in.
Man, are you
Right?
telling me I'm gonna have to go back and watch season 3 again?
Yeah, I think that there's zombies on the outside and they break in on this guy and he starts freaking out and
Ah,
won't be quiet and then she shuts him up. I think I'm not sure, but if that's what I remember, um, I get that they want us to see the horror and drama of his death, but let him agonize a bit and then show us viewers what kind of people our group is by ending his suffering. I did not like that. I'm getting a bit weary of any character who extends the hand of friendship, charity, or hope getting it chopped off. It's a running joke that the moral compasses get killed off, but if
it
all the
is.
characters who believe in hope and not being completely self-serving are the ones being killed off, if constant brutality is all that wins at the end of the day, well, it makes me think back to our first moral compass, Dale. That's not a world I want to live in. You know, I understand her feelings on that, Laura. I understand you, and I agree. But I don't feel the shows is only. I mean, there have been moral compasses that have died. Dale is a good example.
Hmm.
Tyrese is a good example. Herschel is a good example. But the fact of the matter is, all of Rick's crew. I think to be a part of Rick's crew,
You have to have some kind of moral compass.
exactly.
Yeah.
You
And you
have to
know,
balance. You have to have a sense of morality, of humanistic, and he liked, those are the only people he's going to surround himself with. Psychos aren't going to make it on his team. You know what I mean?
right.
And so, any of these people, if we lost Maggie, we would feel that way.
Right, because
You
we're
know?
seeing Maggie essentially fulfill her father's role right
Right.
now. We're
And
seeing
we have seen mercy from Sasha, when she
yeah,
didn't take out Gabriel. We've seen mercy from Abraham when he came back from almost killing
Eugene.
Eugene. We've seen mercy after mercy from the crew, Rick's crew. So they all are a bit of a moral compass. So I don't think the show's particularly. I think what they do is when they're getting ready to kill somebody, they elevate their moral significance.
They do, and they really need to stop that because it's too predictable.
The one stands out in my mind is Herschel. I mean,
Yeah,
Herschel got that whole episode before his death that, when he's saving everybody at the prison with this medical efforts and has that great speech, about
at the
going back
door.
there.
Yes.
Right. Oh, it's awesome. Let's see. Laura says, her ugly, a good ugly. The walkers are once again a force to be reckoned with. This complete fluster cluck of walkers is what I got to remember that one for around my house. It's fluster cluck. Walkers run amok is what we should have seen on Fear the Walking Dead. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Times 10. Amazing job by Nicotero and crew to pull off the Walker herd. Did you see, by the way, great letter, Laura. Thank you so much.
Yes, I agree.
Did you see the pictures of Nicotero in his zombie? He was in that crowd in the
No,
alley.
somebody told me that, and I have
Yeah.
to go back and watch it because
Yeah,
actually,
there's pics online you can see.
okay, good.
Yeah,
He's so
he's
great.
wild looking.
I
You know
just,
the other thing I've noticed is a lot of the zombies always have long hair. Have you noticed that?
yeah. Well, so you can slide Greg in at the last minute if you need to, right?
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
I mean, I go back to that. I go back to the girl who played Amy talking about her death, and she said that the prosthetic was so carefully placed over her own blood vessels that Greg was really the only person who could carry it off without hurting her.
Wow.
So, there's a good reason that most of the walkers have long hair.
I wonder too if there's this. I wonder if there's a scientific theory behind it that things like nails and hair continue to grow a little bit
It's
even though you're
interesting.
a zombie. I don't know.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I know that with human corpses, we see
Ah,
that we perceive that they continue to grow, but what's actually happening is the
the rest
skin.
of the body's shrinking, right?
Right, the skin is shrinking and retracting, and so it makes nails and hair look like they're longer.
Uh,
So
uh,
awesome book, totally off the subject. Have you ever read Stiff by Mary Roach?
no.
So she writes all of these interesting books kind of about scientifically the secret life of cadavers. That's what Stiff is. She wrote a book called Bonk that was a book all about kind of our perceptions of sexuality. But Stiff, if you want to learn about cadavers, so
Stiff sounds
good.
like it's also about our
I know, it
sexuality.
totally does, doesn't it? No, but I totally recommend that book. It's an awesome book.
Huh. I'm trying so hard to get through. A friend recommended American Gods.
Oh, I love that book.
You did?
Hang in there, man. Hang in there. It is
I
so
think
worth
it's
it.
like 600 pages, I think,
Yeah.
and I'm about 300 in, and it's just, I mean, it's not bad. Whenever I read it, it's like I enjoy it, but it's just a lot of nothing has happened.
So you
And
know that my friend Todd and I are just total obsessives about Neil Gaiman.
well, I love Neil Gaiman, and obviously I enjoy Sandman and some of his other comic book stuff, but I really have enjoyed one of my favorite Doctor Who episodes of all time is the one where the TARDIS comes to life as a woman.
I
Uh,
have to confess, I'm not a Whovian, but I'm gonna have to become one.
oh yeah,
To
he's written a couple Doctor Who's. The other one, Nightmare in Silver, I think it's called. I didn't think it was as great, but the other one, and I can't remember the name of it, which is a shame. But it was a Matt Smith one, and he gets the TARDIS goes to a planet that's in an alternate universe, and when he's there, it allows the TARDIS to take physical form, and it becomes this woman, and it's
oh,
this
cool.
the relationship between the Doctor and this woman that is the TARDIS is just it's you can't even, it's just so awesome. It's so well done. And so yeah, so I've been a big fan of his, but so once they, everybody's raving about this book, and they said, oh, they're gonna, I think Cinemax picked it up.
Oh, cool.
They're gonna make a series out of it, and so I was like, wow, then I definitely want to check it out. And boy, I tell you, I can't finish it. I don't know what brought that up, but
Hang in there for the reveal. Hang in there because
yeah,
it's worth it. Yeah.
okay.
Trust me.
Well,
So
I
I'm gonna
kind of feel like I see something coming with him, but I mean, it's just it's not coming fast enough for me.
So I know it's really late where you are, and I don't want to keep you on super longer, but I want to bring up one more series of books before I let you go. Have you
Sure.
read the Newsflash series by Mira
Yeah, Mira
Grant?
Grant. Yep, all three of them.
I love
First,
those.
the first was the best in my
Yeah.
opinion. The third was also very good. The second one I didn't enjoy as much because I realized that the voice of the author, the voice of the female lead
Was the strong voice.
was the voice, right?
Yeah.
That was the voice that hooked me into the book, and to have the whole second book basically be the voice of her brother, that I struggled with a little bit. It was good, but not as good. But then the twist with her in the third book was
Was
fantastic.
excellent. So I
Yeah.
just want to let you know that I reached out to Mira Grant and I'm going to try to get her on the show.
Oh man, gosh, fantastic,
So
smart.
we'll see. I mean, I don't know. You never know.
Yeah, I think she was on with Jason and Karen.
Oh, was she?
Not positive.
I know that they had the person who did The Girl with All the Gifts.
Did they end up
They
getting
did.
him on?
Yeah.
'Cause I know he was trying to get him on it. Man, that is a great book.
Yeah.
Did you
That
read
was a great
book?
read. Yes.
Oh my gosh,
And I
loved
read it because of Jason and Karen.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah.
And I'm so psyched that they're going to make it into a movie. I think it's going to be a great movie.
Yeah.
But the point of view was just awesome, and it was an original zombie tale. I love when people do something original kind of with zombies, as opposed to, the same old,
Yep.
So yeah, I've read a lot of zombie stuff, but my favorite series right now is, and has been for a while, is the Sandman Slim novels. Do you ever read those?
Oh, I haven't read those.
Yeah, they're awesome. It's the story of what the heck is the guy's name that writes them? can't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but that's because I'm too old and it's too late. But
So I need
but
to send you some anti-Alzheimer's drugs as well as the
yeah,
drugs
that
to
would be
keep you
good.
awake. Okay.
Please, please. No, it's this great series of books about this guy that's he's a human angel hybrid,
Oh, cool.
and he spends, he had been taken to hell and lived in hell fighting in these arenas for years, and then he escapes hell to go back to earth to, and kind of get revenge on the person that sent him down there. And it turns out he's got all of these, he doesn't know he's a hybrid yet, and all of these abilities that he thought were just from having been in hell. And I'm not doing it justice in any way, but the way it's written is just, it's kind of like uh, um, is it Sam Spade? What's the famous detective?
Oh yeah, Sam Spade.
Is
Yeah.
it Spade?
Is
It's
it
not.
kind of a guy noir or a film noir kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like a
Cool.
noir, but with modern aesthetics and with like vulgarity. You know what I mean? It's like a modern version of that. It's not like an old Sam Spade thing, but it's got that kind of, I walked into the room and this is what was going on, and that kind of style.
So
Man,
if
I'm doing
if
a
I
good
look
job.
for Sandman Slim on Amazon, will I find it?
Yeah, it's Cardiff. Let me think of the guy's name here. I can look for it real quick. But Sandman Slim, Richard Cadre
C
is the
A D
author's name.
R E
Richard Kadry
K A D R
EY.
Y. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely check it out.
I will.
It's cool.
It sounds like you and I could talk about books all night too.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've been a little bit off reading lately, but yeah, comics or novels. Usually, another good horror or zombie series. At least the first one was really good. It was based on a short story. Oh my goodness sakes! It's by oh my gosh, I'm getting too old.
See, now you're going to have to come back and give us your reading recommendations.
Yes, yeah. Darn. Anyway, damn, I wish I could remember that. It's a story of two brothers in a post-zombie world.
Oh,
And
interesting.
and the one brother is older, and the family business is that he goes out in from they have a protected community, and he goes out into the open area that's kind of like a no man's land and still has zombies in it, and nomads, and people living crazy life out there. And he goes out to silence or to put down people. People hire him to go find their family members who are now zombies,
Oh, that
put
sounds
them
really
down.
good.
And yeah, it's really cool. Dust, what the heck is it called? I'll think of it. I'll email you. You can talk about it next week.
Right on. That sounds good. Well, I just got to tell you, I'm going to miss you so much. And I'm so glad that we've at least got the commitment of the mid-season finale out of you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for letting me come on and have my chance to talk about the season premiere and the first couple episodes. The way everything kind of went down, it just I just felt it wasn't very uh, good for the fans, for the people who are been listening, to just like all of a sudden, as the season began, and here we were two episodes in, and like we were just like, we're not coming back, and it just it wasn't the right way to handle it. So I'm glad that you were willing to let me come on and kind of help do a more smoother transition.
Well, I'm going to totally turn that back around at you and say thank you so much for letting me come on. I mean, this is a dream come true.
Well, you're a natural, and it was awesome that you wanted to do it, and I think Rob is smart to hand the reins over to you. So and it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed these two episodes, and I think you're going to do a great job. And I
Well,
hope everyone
don't
stays tuned.
don't be a stranger, please.
Absolutely, will not. I will not,
All
and I
right.
plan to keep berating you guys on the Facebook page.
Excellent. And we expect to see your tribute art too.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm struggling with this week. I have a lot of other work on my plate this week, so that's another part of the problem. But um, it's like, given the ambiguity of what
Mm-hmm.
happened, I'm not like, when people die in the show that are main characters, I know how I want to approach it. I always do those particular tributes in a certain way, that really is a tribute to that character,
Mm-hmm.
not just the episode. And this one, I'm wary of doing that because I'm not convinced he's dead.
So you either exploit the ambiguity, or
Yeah.
you wait until you've got a reveal.
Well, I feel like if I exploit the ambiguity and don't do something that deals with it,
Mm-hmm.
that then if it's true,
You've
I've
kind of missed
short
out.
yeah I've shortchanged it. Yeah, and then if I do and it's not, then I've kind of missed the target altogether. So I'm struggling with it. But I tonight I came up with a couple sketches that I think that might work for me. That
Excellent.
kind of handle both aspects. But
Hey, and
yeah,
keep us updated on Z Girl too, would you?
absolutely.
Okay.
There's we just finished up New York Comic Con, which was a big success.
Awesome.
And we did issue 6, which is brand new, and that was really well. And we're now selling as many of our current issue as we are of our first issue.
That's great.
So that's nice, because that means we're continuing to get new followers, but also we're getting a lot of people coming back. So that's good. And we've started work on the next arc, which is going to be a multi-book arc, like Odyssey was. And we've got the first script in hand, and I've outlined it and sketched it. So
great.
we're moving. We'll see what happens.
Well, like I said, just don't be a stranger, okay?
Absolutely not. And I appreciate, again, all that you're doing to continue on with the tradition of the show. I think the listeners are lucky that they they've got somebody who's as focused and committed to doing it, and I think that that's going to be a big plus for them. So I'm sure they'll stick with it. Thanks everybody for all of the support over the last, I don't know what, it's been 2 years, I think. And it's been a blast, and I expect I'll see you guys again from time to time.
Oh man, hand over my heart, I'm bowing to you. You just can't see it.
All right, take care, Diane.
All right. You have a good night, man, okay?
You too.
Take care.
Yep.
Bye-bye.